some options for our next book that we will be reading together. And today we confirmed, the universe agrees, that the next book, maybe this is why, maybe we brought a little too much magic into the studio with us today, Monifa, but we are calling on one of our favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert, and we are going to dive into Big Magic. We're really excited about this book. If you haven't read it, it's a nonfiction book that Liz Gilbert published about the creative process. I'm going to let Monifa jump in. We'll see how much we're catching up.
Yes. I love this book. It really is amazing. And it has a great, talk. And so I think this is a beautiful book for our wonderful place in our podcast, because I know we have a lot of creatives out there and it takes a little bit of magic. I think we all know that creative process is magic. So I'm excited. It's going to be awesome.
I think it is. I wanted to post a quick comment so if folks are jumping on, they know that we know we've got a little tech issues going on, but we're gonna stay the course and bring this out, because I can still hear Monifa pretty well, about 85-90% of what Monifa's sharing, and we're just gonna make the most of the time that we have with you, because this is a highlight of the month. And so Monifa's going to share a little bit about the energies that are going on, and then we will take a little preview peek into our book that we've been reading this month, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. So on point and so very timely, I feel. And then next week, we're going to be digging in with the book club. So save next Thursday, same bat time, different bat channel. We're going to get together at 1 p.m. Pacific. The Zoom link is in, along with the information, in our Buy Me a Coffee page, so you can check that out to learn more and join us next Thursday. We'd love to have you with us. So Monifa, I tell you, these hijinks that are afoot. I get the spinning circle as I'm about to hand over the microphone. We're going to take a look at what's going on with our new moon, full moon. Here she is. Monifa's back.
Yes, let me go ahead and start. And again, if I'm breaking up too much, just give me a hand and you'll tell me about 2 seconds later that it's breaking up. So the new moon energy is one of those times that we're really on kind of a 2-day framework here. Depends on where you are in the world. So it's about half and half. Some of y'all, it's the second. Some of y'all, it's the third. So just check in to see what's true for you guys and where you're located. We're talking about September 2nd and 3rd. In September, we have a Virgo new moon and a Pisces full moon. You like those kind of things, right? So we have this amazing 64, the gate 64 in Karen, that is transference. And in the Gene Keys, that's the shadow of confusion, the gift of imagination, illumination. So that is something where we're basically trying to figure out, like, what do we make in our heads come into reality? So I did want to talk a little bit about what happened to us during the full moon Aquarius, because what I want you to know is, like, whatever you were going through is normal. It's okay. It's all right. We're gonna make it. I feel like a lot of people have kind of maybe not given up completely, but you want to, right? And so it's that feeling of kind of just not really knowing where to land, and just like a pretty big ask here in September of like, okay, this is the way we do it from here forward. So let's get used to it. It looks like the lessons that we learned during August and understanding by the time we got to the full moon in Aquarius that our desires aren't just going to go away. They're not going away, and they may not yet be fulfilled, but that's okay. That's the state of being a human. And that is something that we're going to reiterate in this truth of being human, is that whatever you let let go of to be more aligned to who you are in the end of August. If you felt like it was you're going to let go of your desire itself, you might be in a place of half-heartedness, right? Which is that shadow programming partner that kind of clues in when we're not, to show us that we're in a shadow pattern. It's basically so yeah. So if you felt like, I'm like, fuck it, I'm sorry to be cursed on this list. Not the only one. We were ending, even in the full moon, even though it's a pretty good moon for manifestation, it's not necessarily manifesting direct realities unless that was already in process. It was more about manifesting the truth of our aligned. We have a clear, we call a clear signal. Okay. And so in the retrograde, that was also part of it. So over and over. Is that signal clear? And so, like, what were the questions that have come up from you since that full moon? Like, right? Because this is how we get the stuff. And the new moon, I think, is probably the next best thing to what we're gonna get until maybe November, honestly, guys. Like, so it's a good time to just check it out. Like, just check out how our emotions are feeling. And the new moon is in September is going to help us do that. So if you have any of those questions coming up from Aquarius, then that's what we want to answer those questions. Like, how far did it make you feel like your desire wasn't good enough or important? And then if it's creating that half-heartedness, it's that embracing the desire, realizing that desire was fully met, that you totally expected, right? We would have another one. We would just have another one. And we'd want it just as bad eventually, right? So it's just what we do as humans, right? So if we can just say, okay, I want this really bad and I'm going to want something else next. And I am just going to chill about it, right? Like, it is what it is. But not get rid of the desire, not put it away from you. Just recognize what it is. And it's only what it is. It can't actually satisfy you. You're never going to actually be satisfied. It's just not part of being human. We're always evolving. And so that's what we're here to do. So that's not going to stop. So you're just going to have another one. So we just let that go. That was heavy. All right. And then we move our magic moment at the end of September of the Pisces full moon, which is also a lunar eclipse. Now, and again, I'm somebody I'm not going to play with all the energies. I'm not that, precise, right? And I think equinox energy and eclipse energy are, you got to just be real clear on what you want to do and how you're doing it and how you're working with those energies, because there's a lot of energy. So a little bit off of the, like we talk about, if you're shot to the moon, you're 1 degree off, you end up like a light year away. I don't know what it is, but but it gets bigger. They go out, right? Kind of let it fall into line as it comes up. And that's going to be the challenge of September. Okay, guys, that confusion, imagination, illumination is trying to tell us that essentially, I'm going to take my takeaways, that we need to examine and define what brings us into alignment. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing some examination. Okay. And then retrogrades, whatever you've learned, whatever you've had to question, is to take back those desires and the big ideas that come and you believe in them. So in the right energy, in that high energy, frequency, vibration, however y'all think of it, like when you feel good, that is when you want to have your ideas. Okay, that idea is going to be big and scary, and that's okay. Okay, because it's not like it's going to happen right now. It's just that it's the thing that tells you, oh, this is the degree that we're headed, right? So the challenge with that energy is not to let that power get you down or shut you down. In other words, it's too big. I don't know how it's going to happen, so I'm just going to give it up, or right, shut you down. Or like, I'm overwhelmed. There's no way I can have a big idea and live my life, right? That feeling. My mom, I can like literally feel that way sometimes, right? And then optimal is the energy, how we're using the 64 and Karen Curry Parker's estimation is to see the idea and let your imagination serve it. So I had a little precursor of that last night where it's just like I had this desire to just kind of live in the dream for a while. Like just feel good and just live in the dream, like no matter how much it sounds silly at this point, right? And just let ourselves be in imagination and in that feeling. And then unbalanced it, I pulled the quote here of to feel despair or inadequate or ungrounded if you don't know how to make an idea a reality, to feel deep mental pressure to figure it out, right? To give up dreaming. So that's the quote I pulled out because it was like, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. So I'm sure somebody will relate to this. And so that's the new moon coming up, right? So the new moon is like that unbalanced. We just are going to give up the idea that we could even manifest anything. Why would we do it? Do I even have the energy to try? It never works anyways. Oh, my life is horrible. Right. So first, and that's the thing, like what I've learned with my like kind of lessons for the last month were basically like stop trying to like figure things out when you feel like shit. Right. Like if you feel like shit and you know how bad it is, I'm sorry, I'm cursing a lot at this one, but like if you know how bad it is, stop thinking. Like we want to just move into a place, and Susie knows all about this, like shift our energy, move your body, eat something that makes you feel good and vibrant, like fruit, like more sustainably good and vibrant. Like do some movement, breathe, kiss a tree, hug a tree. I actually learned that trees can kind of have a trauma response if you don't talk to them first. So you have to like know, I am here with good intentions. I love you. Do you mind if I hug you, and ask permission? Just to like, you're going to get the good energy either way because that's what nature does. But you want to be in a cooperative universe, you're going to talk to the tree, and that's okay. We all do it. All right. The contemplation, like of like the question I was asking that I pulled from Karen Curry Parker here is, how do I feel about having dreams, but not always the solutions? Like how they're going to happen, right? So that's a good journal. And then I think if we do that, then we'll be in a really good place to like, okay, this is the dream. It's okay to like get excited about the dream and not have the practical thing fall into place right away. And the full moon is letting go of the need to do something without a signal. Okay, so when we get in the good vibe, and instead of like, oh no, my life is shit, and I got up to the good vibe, then we say, I want something. That's when we get, I would love more of this feeling in my business. Okay, it's a pretty good way to do it. And so when we get into that full moon, we have to just allow that wish to happen. That's basically the magic that's going to happen. It's the gate 36 is exploration. for Karen Curry Parker's Quantum Human Design. And in the Gene Keys, it is the Shadow of Turbulence, the Gift of Humanity, and the City of Compassion. So exploration, like literally, I mean, a lot of people say that is our purpose, is to experience and explore, right? To have experiences here. And in that sense, explore, right? And so what we think we know, we have to give up that full moon. Okay. Living the non-action until the new pattern is available is kind of how I translated what she said about it. So this to me was like, okay, I was already ready. I was ready to give you action plans that would be servicing your business and life. And then I was just like, oh, no action is the action, right? Like you're not going to do nothing unless you receive a signal. The challenge is to not let boredom cause you to create more chaos. I'm not looking at anybody specific but me. Optimally holding the vision in aligned frequencies, that feeling good through the void until the new pattern is established. So that the pattern is established because you get something that says, oh, this is actually what I would expect from the thing that I decided I wanted to manifest. If it doesn't look like the thing or doesn't smell like the thing, it depends on what your dominant senses are. If it doesn't feel like the thing, whatever it is for you, then be like, oh, nope, I'm going to go ahead and be bored. But what I loved about the unbalance is leaping into new opportunities without alignment. The contemplations I pulled from Karen Curry Parker are, what can I do to keep myself aligned is supposed to be the word, guys. Aligned even when I'm bored. What daily practice will I use to amplify my energy? Okay. So I feel like I've been lulled into this as well. Like this is kind of like, I feel better when I'm relaxed, right? And then, but the reality is when we're manifesting, we need energy. And so even though there's nothing to call it in for, doesn't mean we stop accessing the universe, guys. We get to keep doing it and be consistent. And when we're consistent in doing it is when our results show up consistently. Okay. And so that's kind of the message of the September. It's like, okay, yeah, we're human, so you have to keep doing it. There's patterns happening, but if you keep trying to do, start action during parts and you don't feel good, then it's going to create the pattern that you don't want to feel anymore. And if we get over ourselves a little bit, no kidding. But yeah, so it drives us into that chaos and that chaos that doesn't feel good. I like chaos because it's creative in some aspects. It's like, oh, anything is possible. It's expansive to me. Some people don't like chaos, and some people are addicted to chaos. Like, truth be told, right, Susie? So yeah, it's just a matter of being in conscious awareness, and it's okay to feel bad, but don't try to fix your life from feeling bad. Just go take a nap and then go feel better with the tree. And then we can talk about ideas of what's going to be different,
I'm loving that. That's so insightful. That's really interesting. I never thought as a tree hugging hippie. And of course, we should ask consent. Consent is very important. As is intention.
It never occurred to me.
It's really interesting. But there is wisdom as we're learning and discovering and digging into an emergent strategy. There is wisdom in that interconnectedness of all things. As you were talking, I noted some flower essences to go along with these energies. So with our new moon, September 2nd and into the 3rd, what I feel like would be supportive right now is larch and scleranthus are wonderful flowers for supporting your intuition, for helping you trust that you have the answers within. So with those insights coming from the last full moon, what we've been releasing, and, in this season of what we want to create, trust those intuitions. So larch and scleranthus will support you there. Wild rose is a beautiful flower essence for rekindling that passion. So if you're feeling not totally plugged in, if you're having trouble holding on to that vision because it feels like the energy isn't moving, wild rose can help you stay connected. And wild oat is a wonderful flower essence for connecting with your purpose. So if you are seeking clarity or more direction in that regard, wild oat is a beautiful flower in that regard as well. And then for the full moon, September 17th, a full moon in Pisces with a lunar eclipse to boot. What a season we are in. But that is just the beginning of eclipse season. That's going to roll into October. We'll cover more about that in the next coming weeks. What feels supportive there with this full moon is impatience. Just like it sounds, impatience, the flower, helps support our patience with the process, helps us remove that need to be hurrying and pushing things along. Star of Bethlehem is a beautiful healing flower to help you connect with spirit, also to help heal past traumas and wounds so you can release that baggage and move forward more connected and more open to those divine synchronicities that are going to be coming together. Since it's not only in our hands, the universe is conspiring for us. And walnut is a beautiful flower essence, comes from a tree, flower essence for transitions. So that feels important right now. And it's funny how much in my own life I am seeing these reflected. I'm going to make myself a little super bottle. And sweet chestnut is a beautiful flower essence for bringing back in the light. So if you're feeling discouraged, if you're feeling a little bit of hopelessness, if you're struggling right now, sweet chestnut is a beautiful essence just to help you feel supported and trust in the process and know that it is all unfolding according to a divine plan. That might seem mysterious at the moment, but the unfolding, right, is where we really get to grow into these changes that we're occupying right now.
Wow, so good. So good. Those compliments are like, you see how nature provides, right? Like
She's got our back.
totally. And yeah, and that's what we have to remember about how the energies are shifting too. As much as it feels like, oh, why? It's that it's for us. It's for us. And so if we can find a perspective in which that feels true and not just looks and it's a good idea, feels true, then we're where we need to be. You know, we don't have to keep questioning that. And yeah, I always like to check in for the now moment and just like, am I living? Am I surviving? Am I okay? And then I realize, hey, I do literally in my now moment in my physical body have everything I need, right? At minimum. And then start getting a gratitude, start from there, right? I'm here. That's the first gratitude. Like, oh, could have lost all my chances. That could be an option, you know, and then go from there, you know. Yay. So excited because we have this amazing book, Emergent Strategy, guys.
We've both been listening on Audible, so it's a great
I
listen.
can't see anything right now.
Miss Adrienne reads to us, and she is a beautiful storyteller,
It is.
a singer,
It is.
teller of spells.
She Yes, absolutely. And yeah, that's even one of the beautiful guarantees you get with the book is some rituals to go with the work. And so it's really beautiful. I love that she brings that part of herself into it as well. Do you want me to go ahead with the quote?
Yeah,
Good. All right. Just checking on my lag too, because I just want to have a sense of how long is it taking. All right. So we have a quote within the quote from Nick Oblensky. It's called that it goes, emergence is the way complex systems and patterns arise out of a multiplicity of relatively simple interactions. So we're going to talk a little bit about the small is good. And that to me is why she chose that quote, right? It's the simple things, it's the little things. And she likes to come back to that because she has big ideas, right? And big desires for the community, not just herself, right? The next part is, it is another way of speaking about the connective tissue of all that exists. This is from her. The way, the Tao, the force, change, God, goddess, life, bird flocking, cell splitting, fungi whispering underground. Emergence emphasizes critical connections over critical mass, building authentic relationships, listening with all the senses of the body and the mind. And then we're going to skip to emergence is our inheritance as a part of this universe. It is how we change. Emergent strategy is how we intentionally change in the ways that grow our capacity to embody the just and liberated worlds we long for. And how beautiful is that?
Mm,
Just gives
so
you a glimpse
beautiful.
of like how beautiful her writing is, and the ideas that come together that are, they're fed in like real life community conversation, and the desire for that to be how we choose and lead in the world, you know? So it's just a gorgeous book, and I really hope you get your hands on it.
Yes, whether you're reading it, whether you're listening to it, I just love the ideas. And she shares so much from her own experience as an organizer working with different groups, but also just from her personal experience as a human trying to do better, right? Seeing where there are changes that need to be addressed, there are issues that need to be addressed and change that needs to happen. And how does one person stand against what can feel like this overwhelming tide? And I love the exploration. She really digs into throughout the book biomimicry, the adaptations of nature to resolve complex problems, right? And change is always kind of a focus because nature is always changing. There's nothing static in nature. Everything that alive is constantly in a process of change. And so taking a look at that and how it can work together and learning lessons from the environment around us is just such a change from, what you might feel like nonfiction books typically are, right? This is like a conversation with a bestie on a comfy couch, like digging into how do we address the things that we see in the world that we are tired of sitting down for.
Oh, so good. Yeah, it's a great way to speak about it. And yeah, that's the thing, is that we come into these, are we doing this for just our general ego and idea, or are we doing this for the cohesiveness, like in the the fullness of community? So she talks about the biomimicry, but she also talks about like indigenous or First Nations, that we are having those conversations because let's talk about like how we are in a community with the livingness of nature, right? And then yes, using those ideas to contrive our human networks and communities. I love the way she ties that in with like the mycelium network. So anybody who's into Star Trek should be excited about that. And that kind of thing. And like, and she even brings in her own futurist, her favorite futurist. Gosh, am I gonna remember her name? Do you know her name?
Octavia
Um,
Butler.
Octavia Butler. Oh my gosh, this is why my memory is trash.
Adrienne
But
actually
yeah, like
says towards the beginning of the book, read all of Octavia's books, put this down, go do it, and then comes back with a quick reference just to check your knowledge. Now, I still need to dig into the divine Ms. Butler, but I think that's really interesting. And she does say, science fiction is that invitation to envision a future where things are different, where some of these deep, deep issues and wounds are resolved. What can it look like with true collaboration, with true equality and equity, with some of these things that right now they are only fantasy? Like, let's bring fantasy to life. So I love that she weaves that in throughout the book.
yeah, and it does actually measure up with that full moon of imagination, of like letting the imagination be the starting place and work back from there, you know? Um, but yeah, like this is why she talks about like we have like points that are emphasized throughout the book and what makes it important to her. So we have like small is good, small is all. And it's that one of her statements is the large is a reflection of the small, right? And so when we are in that cooperative environment, again, that we can just kind of mimic what's already working. All right. So if we're already recognizing what's working within nature, what's working within systems of nature, then we're like, we are nature, so it might work for us. Just saying. Kind of is her we call it her way of saying, biomimicry is a good idea.
Yes, fractals. It's such a beautiful kind of illustration of fractals, which is one of the elements of nature that she comes back to throughout the book, that everything we see, that we experience on the small scale, is reflected in the large scale. And also it's heartening to remind ourselves that the changes we make, even on the small scale, have influence that ripple out to impact the larger scale. So when we feel small and helpless, keep in mind these other little points of light out there who are making the small changes too, and recognize that that influence is impacting the whole.
So good. Yes. Yes. And then we have coming to the next part of the change is being a constant. So change is constant. It is the only constant. I don't know how we got lost in this idea that there's other versions of constants. But that
It
just tells you how lost we've been for the last, I don't know, 1,000 years. So like change is constant. If we were in touch with nature, that would be obvious. But it's also like that evidence of why we need to have a sense of being in motion and in flow with what is changing, right? And so we have this wonderful takeaway from, I lost his name too. So
Bruce Lee, when Bruce Lee talks about being like water.
Being like water. Yes. And Adrienne is a big fan of Bruce Lee, by the way, which just makes her cooler. And that's all you need to know about that. But yeah. And so yeah, this evidence of like what it is to, when we mimic biology, when we mimic the nature aspect of everything, then we can build in the adaptation to the thing we're creating, instead of trying to keep fixing something that we think is going to be fixed because we fixed it before, right? Like, so that's why I think it's really important concept, and that she obviously has written most of the book around. Yeah.
I love her next topic here, or her point, these core principles of emergent strategy. She lays them out early in the book, and then she keeps coming back to these, that there's always enough time for the right work. And she goes on to say there's a conversation in the room that only these people at this moment can have, and talks about the value of finding it. And again, in the midst of change, because that is the constant that we have to reckon with, what has conspired to bring these people to be in this conversation right now, to have Monifa and I sitting here having these ideas. If we were talking about these same topics next week, we would have different ideas, right? There's some magic in the present moment, the events that have conspired to bring this group of people together at any given point in time, and what is possible when you channel that vision together, I think is really inspiring.
Yes. Yes. And I think anybody who's been in like a human design room understands that when you have these energies all living together, there is exponential wisdom, genius available. And it doesn't take any one person being the genius for that to happen. It just happens by gathering. And so that is part of the thing. And I'm always excited about the conversation. I think I'm always pointing to the conversation, like what is up to talk about. And I always feel like I have to kind of sell that as a good thing, like as an important thing, right? And I love that she's made this so potent in this framework, right? That of course it's important for us to be in the same room talking about the thing, right? So yeah. And the next one is never a failure, always a lesson. It's never a failure, always a lesson. And for me, this was like, I love this aspect in the beginning of the book of just that she, as a person, had decided to listen more, right? And that she goes through the conversation about what it meant to her to listen in her family relationships and in her community organizational relationships, and then that how it made her realize that she was a spiritual leader, even though, and that she was a spiritual person, even though that meant to her that everybody became a teacher to her, and that was her relationship with spirituality, right? So having these conversations is a spiritual act to her, right? Like, I'm learning from my teachers, we're having conversations. And so it's so beautiful because it gives you the mind and the spirit of the person that's giving you this information. And I love how she gives us a little gentle seeping so that it doesn't feel like I don't know, because I feel like a lot of these concepts are pretty big. And like imagining running a conversation this way, it feels pretty daunting. Like everybody has something to say, and now we're gonna, right? Now we're gonna get to a conclusion within like the century. This is what's happening. But like a part of that is what happens next as well. But go ahead, Susie.
Yes, yes, so good. And we get to dive in much more deeply next week. We just want to give you kind of an overview and whet your appetite, so y'all come back and join us next Thursday. So any of these that stand out to you, have it in mind as you're reading or reviewing the book, but come back next week. We've got so much to talk about. Her next core principle is trust the people. And she goes on to say, if you trust the people, they become trustworthy. And I think this is so important in the way in which things have become so divided, and it feels very us versus them. And it's so hard to find spaces to have civil conversation and understand other people's point of view, right? And the more separate we become, the more the people on the other side of the table, the room, they feel it. I mean, we all feel it, whether we're connected or we're not connected. And the value that taking that leap and giving trust to people and watching how they can grow into it and fulfill that capacity, right? Whether we agree or we disagree, if we make that step to start trusting each other again, to trust that people are inherently good. Sometimes it can feel hard to find the common ground, but inherently within people, there is goodness. There's just worry and concern and fear and these other things that get up in the way and muddy the waters and broaden that separation. And so the value of trust, I think, is a really beautiful thing that she touches to in a place where, as a leader in some of these groups. She's worked with Ruckus. She's worked with groups advocating for change in Detroit and across the country. It's easy to feel like we have to take a stand against the people who don't agree with us. And so the fact that she really encourages that this bridge is really heartening. I think that we can make change and not do it at the expense of other people or leave other people behind. That's kind of science fiction-y, isn't it?
Yes. Well, and then pretending like we've all been so completely accurate our entire lives. I'm sure there's things that you thought as a child that you just realized were not accurate, and have moved on since then. Like that is the process of being human. So trusting that people will move on, that they will live into a higher truth if the truth is available. She talks about the decentralized leadership that is important in that trusting, right? Because like, okay, so I trust you to, stay in your corner, but I don't trust you with my children, and I don't trust you with to lead this conversation, right? Like, but can we trust them with a portion of it? Like, is there a part that they know better than we know? And no one, and a concept that no one is responsible for everything. No one person is responsible for everything, right? And I
Mhm.
think this is hard because I feel like as leaders, we often want to take the baton and like, okay, if I'm good enough, if I'm smart enough, then everybody will be in a high vibrational conversation, right? Um, but she says, love it, like that it should be the centering conversation of leadership, not you, love, right? And so if we allow love to be the center, then we can trust the process and we can trust that people will recognize that love is in the room. Um, Instead of we're just that high vibe and fabulous, right? And instead of like having that, the idea being that what is against us and what is keeping us from what we are saying we want as a community, right? And the sides of who's getting what they want and who's not getting what they want, this kind of thing. And so if we keep love the center, then we can let those things line themselves up according to that truth. And then people fall in line because it's a higher concept than we can you know, all, if we could all hold it within our own selves, then enlightenment of the universe would be done and we wouldn't need to do anything else.
Just call it down. Call it
Yeah.
down. Yeah, I really love what she shares, and I think, did Tony Robbins, was his documentary I Am Not Your Guru or something like that. This way that we have we a tendency to attach a face with a movement, with a stand. And she talks about how important it is to open that up so that the movement is bigger than any one person. It's going to outlast any one person. And if any one person needs to take a step aside to take care of themselves, they can do that without carrying the weight of a movement with them. So it's really about inspiring collective change that is self-sustaining, and love is that kind of fuel that helps that everyone keep coming together around the foundation, as opposed to the person that everybody wants to hang out with.
And why didn't they show up today? Why did I even come? Yeah.
Right. Oh no, I didn't know they weren't going to be here. I'm going home. Forget it. And the next core that she talks about, the next core principle, is this ability to move at the speed of trust, which goes back to that. If the movement isn't hinging on one single person that has to maintain all of this trust and goodwill and energy all the time, it's a lot more susceptible to crumbling if it can be dispersed, if we're trusting everybody who's a part of it, because we can see that everybody's coming from this space of love, then that helps it move more quickly. So being able to be nimble and agile based on that trust relationship is really another thing that I think is really fascinating to consider and explore and start to integrate.
Yes, yeah, and I love this. Jared Bull used to talk about this, which is somebody who does some mentorship, and it was this idea that essentially that if you aren't trusting, then it's really hard to make a good decision. It's hard to make any decision because now you're playing mind games in order to choose your version of what your decision you're going to make. And so it does make it move faster if you just trust that love is in the room, if you just trust that we are going to operate in a way that allows more love possible, for the people involved. So that is so beautiful. And then the focus is the next one, focus on critical connections more than critical mass. And I think this is a freak flag, be wave high. High and bright. Build the resilience by building the relationships. I love that she pulled that because I was like, that's Susie. Um, but yes, like I love this so much because to me it is more important that our connections are true and that they run deep and that we get to do deeper work because they're true, and that is more important to me overall. But yeah, what's your take, Susie? I'm curious.
Yes. And the value of those relationships, right? Again, because the movement is more than any one person. And so the more relationships we have weaving it all together, holding all of these people together, you know, in alignment with one focus or one mission, is it just makes it brings a tenacity to it, right? It brings that resilience that they can ride out some delays, some struggles, some misunderstandings, some mixed messages, and they can stay the course for the longer term, so they can bring that vision into reality. I mean, I think that's what, as people who want to collaborate and create good change, you know, it's all about finding that vision, like we were talking about with our energies. We're in this space. We've been getting clarity on the vision. We're still a little hazy on the process. And we can release what it's going to take for us to get there, as long as we hold on to the vision of where it is that we are trying to get to. It's a little flexibility for synchronicities and divine magic.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's important. I think it's an important reference, because I do think if you feel like your whole beingness, and including your vision, is tied up into the response and the movement of other people, then you get antsy and you start pulling and wanting to control so that your thing can happen. And then,
Right.
you know, it becomes that dominant conversation, and then we pull that energy back to us. It's easier to fall apart. But when we have this connection, and it keeps us honest, I think, too, because the idea that we can do it all is nice. And it's like, all right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. No, but if we can hand the baton, and we can keep handing the baton, then it may, you know, actually be possible to accomplish the full mission. And and I've seen this happen. I have friends who have worked with some pretty amazing, um, I don't know, people that hold projects for the community. And how, like, if that team dynamic is, I'll tell you what to do, and then you just go do your piece, and then don't talk to me. It just falls apart, and it falls apart so fast, like people don't even know what's happening because communication isn't good. Like, you know, everybody should be in on what's going on, period. And then it's all about, like, being able to hand the baton just by saying, or just by allowing other people to show up. Not, you don't even, if you let them show up in the beginning, then they have the responsibility to show up in the end. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And another one of more of the core principles is less prep, more presence, which I love. I love, you know, taking imperfect action, not letting perfect get in the way of progress, all of those aspects. And she talks about sharing the perspective on structure and hierarchy from a healer's frame of reference. You know, when Adrienne at the beginning of the book talks about who she is and what she does, she's got a long list of talents and jobs, if you will. It makes me feel a little bit better about being one of a do lots of stuffers myself, right? You know, it takes all of that influence and getting that perspective of somebody who honors the whole and honors our innate ability to heal and sees that, right? So let's look for the biomimicry. Let's look for the ability to heal on the greater scale and call that forward. And that doesn't happen when we're sitting back and waiting for the perfect time and the perfect message and the perfect opportunity. It takes from taking opportunities where and when we can find them.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I think that's why she speaks about, like, her as a personality coming to this work as a healer. And I think because it gives us that frame that says, all of it is part of the healing. So if it's pain, then it's part of the healing. If it's so how do we allow that to net us back into the wholeness that we want to perceive, right? And so that's something that it takes, like, a healer mind to kind of have this understanding that, no, the pain isn't the problem. It's that we aren't yet whole, right? That we're not yet all connected. And so when it's just about getting everybody connected and having the conversation, letting everybody be their full self, right? Like, and I think that's what's really beautiful about, again, the perspective and the approach in this book. And we have so much there's so much that we did not cover. We did not cover like even the matrices of the book itself of how she addresses these things. So she pulls from Octavia Butler's work, which is awesome. I don't know. I feel like I have to say it. But yeah, like even my computer's like, I don't know. No, maybe not. Maybe you don't have to say it. Okay, maybe I don't. Whatever. But like it's awesome. I come to the book
Withholding a
club
quote
because
from
then
you.
I'll have it. It's not a quote. It's the breakdown of the chapters, you know, and like where she pulls it from Octavia's work and what's important about it to the work, right, of building the community conversation. And so,
We'll have to get it at book
and
club
then
next
what it
Thursday.
takes, right? Because it's more of that, like, what does it take to do that? That's why I wanted to say it, because it's like, okay, yeah, it takes a sense of attunement. It takes a sense of fortitude. Like you have to keep going. There's some things in there, and then she pulls from aspects of nature, how it's available. It's already available. You don't have to go get it or build it or anything. It's available. And then how we can model that through the biomimicry. So it's just fabulous. Did I say that already? So next week, what we're gonna this is my favorite. Oh, like because I was talking about the healing behavior thing. I wanted this quote. I think it is healing behavior to look at something so broken and see the possibility and wholeness in it. See how fast that was? I could have just read it. All right. Next week.
Next week. That was just a surface perspective in the book too. So if you don't have time to dig into the book, we understand. We're busy kids too. In the back, in the book, it's page 185, I think. She includes an assessment. Are you an emergent strategist? And then assessments in each of the different aspects, the elements that we dig into. And so there's some prompts in there you could journal on if you just want to kind of do a little introspection. And then we'll share a little bit more of the Cliff Notes version next week. We'll have some more to dig into. So would love for you to join us if you can, even if you haven't read the book, although it's a terrific book to add to the collection. It is one that sat on my shelf for several years, unfinished, until we recommitted to bringing it forward in this book club. So I'm so grateful that we did, because it's such a beautiful listen. It's a wonderful read. And I think it's a really important part of anybody's collection. So we can make good change, make good trouble, make positive change, and make some good trouble.
Yes, I love making good trouble. Yes, I wanted to leave y'all with some contemplations y'all can think about if you do end up getting the book, or if you want to just see what we come up with over the next course of the week on these contemplations. They are how we can lean on the intelligence of nature and build stronger, highly influential communities. The next one is, what aspects of leadership does it make sense to prioritize? When we're shifting out of hierarchy, are we shifting out of hierarchy? And then like what prioritizes itself from there, from that centering love, right? And then the next one is how following the subversive plots of the underground networks means the small thrive. So this is my favorite part of the book, because she gets real subversive at the end of the book. And she's just like, and then we rule everything. And you're just like, yay. But yeah, I mean, in that community with all involved, with love at the center, how beautiful is that, right?
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Monifa. Thank you so much for sticking it out, for bringing us the energy updates. We beat Mercury at its own game.
We made it. That's all we need to know. And then, yeah, I'll probably edit a little bit on the YouTube version, but y'all maybe we can just put a note in the comments, just like it's a little splotchy in the beginning. It was only about almost 10 minutes,
We need a
but
strong
like,
comeback.
it was pretty awesome.
Looking forward to seeing everybody at book club next week. You'll get information if you check out buymeacoffee.com/verve.vision. The Zoom link is there. Buy us a coffee. We're so grateful to have you with us. Thanks for joining us this week.
See you there.